scratching. It came from somewhere behind my bed. I was sure of it. In the wall, perhaps, or beneath the floor, from somewhere I couldn't reach. It was incessant, persistent, and it seemed to come nearer every minute. In the evenings, before we are marched off to our cells, we are lined up in the ward hall and given pills to make us sleep. Mine do not affect me anymore, as I have gradually become insensitive to their influence, and thus I lie awake, listening to the scratching and going silently mad. Or madder. I had to expose the source or I would get no rest. Beneath my mattress was the stash of bits and pieces I had pinched whenever I could. A stub of candle from the dining hall, a match from the floor in Dr. Limer's quarters, bits of paper, and of course, my silver pencil. I lit the bit of wax and inspected my cramped surroundings. I managed to fit myself under my bed and saw a small pile of debris below a tiny hole in the wall, just an inch or two above the ground. As I watched, the hole grew larger, created by something drilling its way through from the other side. Not knowing what was coming, but anxious, I will admit, I crawled out from under the bed and waited. Suddenly, all was silent. I had set my candle on the floor beside me, and something I could not see crossed its path, for a shadow grew large on the wall opposite, a shadow of some terrible creature. I saw a pair of sharp claws in profile, a long snake-like tail, and there sat I with nowhere to run. Then, from beneath the bed, a rat emerged. This was my creature. He was of a respectable size, but nothing more. He sat up on his haunches and cleaned himself thoroughly of the dust and dirt. After a final shake, he looked up at me. "Well, it's about bloody time," said the rat. "I beg your pardon," said I. "It's taken me weeks to get through that wall. Extraordinary that such a poorly made building should have such a damn sturdy wall. It's quite exhausted me. Did you know that this place was erected directly on top of the city's trash heap?" "It's true, I can assure you," he said. "Quite mad, isn't it? And no wonder it's falling down around us, don't you think?" He advanced towards me. "I say, you wouldn't happen to have any crumbs, would you?" he asked, looking tragically hopeful and rubbing his front paws together. I searched my makeshift pocket, really just a bit of my hand tied up, where I usually kept a store for the asylum rats. "All out, I'm afraid," I said, terribly sorry. Of course not, no matter, dearie, no matter at all. Oh, goodness me, I haven't introduced myself, whatever would the Queen say?" He hopped up to my knee and stood tall on his hind legs, clearing his little throat as though about to say something terribly important. "I am Sir Edward, formerly prized pet of the young Queen Victoria, now ambassador of the League of Plague Rats, and I am at your service, madam." He bowed his head and continued on. "It is with the deepest gratitude for the kind consideration you showed to our dearly departed Percy, head of the League's ill-fated Operation Pantry, that I have come on behalf of the League to present you with a token of our appreciation and devotion." He hopped down to the floor shouting, "Onward, plague rats!" All at once, a small army of rats marched out from beneath the bed. On their backs, they shared the burden of a stuffed toy bear. The bear was a faded pink, rather shabby, with patches covering torn spots and a missing eye. It also had specks of what appeared to be dried blood matted deep into its scrappy fur. "And halt!" commanded Sir Edward. He addressed me once again. "Several years ago," he said, "the asylum was graced by the presence of a young lady, or a lum yady, just about your age. She was as good a soul as God makes, and was a great friend of the League. It was at that time that Dr. Limer was appointed, and she was his first victim, being bled to her death." At this, the rats behind Sir Edward bowed their heads and sighed in unison. "Oh," can you all say that with me? "Oh." "Her only belonging we now present to you." He waved his paw towards the bear. "For me, well, I am honored." I picked up the tattered toy and was suddenly filled with a heavy sadness. It seemed to carry within it the pain of all who had suffered within these walls, and the tears rose to my eyes. A little rat uttered a whimper in sympathy, and the rat next to him delivered a playful slap to the back of his head. "I will cherish and protect it," I said, "and I do thank you all very much." With a parting bow, Sir Edward led the rats back towards the hole they had entered by. But before he disappeared, he turned back to me. "If you don't mind, dearie, I shall leave this tunnel open," he said. "I believe we may have need of each other in the coming days."